Okay, so we're going to do some examples of the law of cosines. As a reminder, the law of cosines is a squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2 times b times c times the cosine of a. Now, I know that you can be given it in three different forms, starting with b squared or starting with c squared. The thing to remember is that this letter A, side A, and the angle A, these two letters need to be the same. Similarly, these two letters need to match these two letters. That's just a really good way to remember it in case you're not looking for side A. Okay, I'm now going to get rid of that. Well, let's keep that for now. Okay, so as we look at this problem we have, to solve the triangle, we need to fill in all of these. So we're gonna, what do we know already? Well, we know C is 7, we know B is 9, and we know angle A is 60. Okay, can't use the law of sines because you don't have an angle and a side across from it, so we're going to use the law of cosines. It's all set up for us. We are going to use this a squared one, right? So we're going to say a squared equals 7 squared plus 9 squared minus 2 times 7 times 9 times the cosine of 60. While that looks annoying and complicated, you can in fact type it all into your graphing calculator just as it is, nothing special. If you do that, and take a second to do that, you'll get a squared equals 67. Square rooting, you'll get a equals 8 point, we can round it to 8.2. A really common error is to forget to square root it. I know that sounds silly now, but once you get going, that's what happens. So we know now that this is 6.2. Now, we have an angle and a side across from it, so let's use the law of sines. So to do this, let's say the sine of 60 over 6.2 is equal to, and you can pick whatever you want. I'm going to pick angle C, so the sine of angle C over 7. You know how to solve this problem. We'll cross multiply, we'll divide. An intermediary step is 0.7393 equals the sine of C. If we do the inverse sine, we'll get angle C is equal to 47.7 degrees. We can write that in there. And then we can subtract from 180 to get angle B, which is 72.3. So that's one way to solve for the law of cosines. Here's another example of law of cosines. Again, down here I'm just going to write the law of cosines just so we can remember it. This is something that you should get memorized when you can. And again, as a reminder, this letter and this letter are the same. These are the other two letters, and these match. Okay, so for this problem, this is a little trickier. We don't know an angle. So we're going to have to find an angle. Okay, let's start by finding the biggest angle. In the law of cosines, that's a really good rule of thumb. So if we need angle B to be the angle, then we need to start with B squared. So we're going to say 15 squared equals the other two sides, 5 squared plus 12 squared, minus 2 times 5 times 12 times the cosine of B. Sorry, I crammed that in there. Now we have to go ahead and solve this. So what we need to do is we need to subtract these guys. Subtract those guys. So we're going to get 15 squared minus 5 squared minus 12 squared. And that's going to equal negative 2 times 5 times 12 times the cosine of B. A couple things here. Notice this negative sign. That's a really big deal, and that is another moment where mistakes happen a whole lot. So you need that negative sign. And then notice how I wrote that. You can just go ahead and type that into your calculator just like that. You're welcome to do these individually and subtract, but my advice is to just do it that way into your calculator. If you do that, you get 56 is equal to negative 2 times 5 times 12 times the cosine of B. Again, you don't need to figure this out. You're welcome to. This is just one big number. But we want to isolate the cosine of B, so we're going to go ahead and divide by negative 2 times 5 times 12. I'm going to put this in parentheses. So you can type this into your calculators, 56 divided by parentheses, negative 2 times 5 times 12. If you did that correctly, you should get negative 0.46666 repeating. Okay, so that's what equals the cosine of b. Do the inverse of cosine and you get b is equal to 117 degrees, 0.8. Sound good? So now we have one angle. Now we have an angle on the side across from it, so that's pretty helpful. Now we can set up the law of sines. And again, for this law of sines, you can do whatever you want. I'm going to do the sine of 117.8 over 15 is equal to the sine of a over 12. Okay, if you do this, you end up with 0.7074 approximately sine a, so a is going to equal about 45 degrees. And then you can subtract from 180 to get the other answers. So if we're going to get our answers, a is 12, b is 15, c is 5. That's easy. That was given. Angle A we know is 45. Angle B is 117.8, which leads by subtraction C to 17.2.